All right, so we're getting started here. We're actually starting off to, it's a bit funny. Welcome to the Quick Draw. We're going to debunk climate change today. That's going to be fun. I'm Mike. I'm the real science guy. With me are my co-host, John. He's the black scientist. That's like a unicorn. And Dee. Dee's just here to look pretty. She's a woman. She doesn't do science. You know how that works. So
yeah. She has two brothers too. So again, it just totally
all right. So she's just here to look pretty and make sandwiches for the real science guys. Okay.
Except me, because I'm a unicorn. I need to grow a horn.
Yeah. So this is actually a good time to talk about the climate change debate, just because we've got two disastrous hurricanes. Somehow we got people getting the impression that this is unprecedented, that we haven't actually had worse hurricanes. And I did some research on that, and I don't think that's entirely accurate. And then we had the eclipse, which that was really cool. Did you guys see the eclipse?
I did not see it, but I was told it was racist.
Wait, why is it racist?
Apparently because it only went over states that voted for Trump. So I gather somehow that's racist. And that, yeah, I don't know. There's an article. I'll have to find it.
It's funny that they say that, because you could always take it, for a long time, eclipses were considered like harbingers of doom. So you could almost, if you take it that way, you could just be like, it only went over the states that voted for Trump.
Well, I guess they are saying.
Repent, sinners!
Well, hey, that's what they're saying about the hurricanes, right? So.
What were you gonna say?
I said that it also skipped Wisconsin.
Yep.
Ah!
Scott Walker. Hey, you know where else it skipped? Michigan. Hey, it only hit your state, so I'm going with, again, you're the evil white guy.
I only got a partial. I only got a partial eclipse. I got to step my work. They actually let us step outside our office building to look at it. I managed to not burn my retinas out. I'm very happy with myself. I think my mother would be proud.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny though, because a lot of people are like, see, we can predict eclipses. That means you can predict the weather. I'm like, that's not how.
It's not the same thing, yeah.
So it was funny. There was an interesting observation too, and I didn't buy into it at first, because I was like, I'm not feeling it. But then I felt that, like, even with a partial eclipse, so we got about, I think, 85% covered, and that was a good 5 or 6 degrees colder. It was noticeable when it was covered. I was like, oh, it's actually kind of nice. I could do that with it all year round. So it's just, I thought it was funny. I did a Periscope about it too, because it was just pissing me off. People are like, see, we can predict. The fact that we can predict eclipses means you should trust us when we say that the world is going to end because of some climate disaster. I'm actually really glad they made the comparison between eclipses and climate change, because it actually proves how stupid climate change is. Right. Because here's the thing about eclipses, right? Eclipses use this thing that scientists like to call math. All right.
Well, the eclipse doesn't
struggle with math, but it's a really handy tool.
In physics.
What did you say, Dee?
The eclipse doesn't do math. Scientists do the math to figure out.
But yes.
Like I said, Dee's here just to look pretty.
I think that
she doesn't get it. She does not understand how math works, how science works. I got to mansplain it to her. By the way, before anyone gives me any shit about the stuff we're going to talk today, I'm going to just get engaged in the academic pissing contest and tout my credentials. I have a degree in mechanical engineering, just like Bill Nye, the science guy. If you listen to that fucktard, you got to listen to me. Because not only do I have a degree in mechanical engineering, I minored in mathematics. And unlike Bill Nye, the science guy, I've actually designed things. I haven't pissed my time away, playing a scientist on TV.
Also, I'm going to give him a nickname. I'm going to go with Bill, my vagina has its own voice, Nye. So.
Syllables, man.
Yeah, but we're
That's
going
too
for
many pills.
accuracy.
I'm lazy. I'm very, very, very lazy.
I know. It's so well.
So funny thing, you do have to listen to me because I am a real science guy.
In the area
So
of
the eclipse, right? We can crunch numbers. We can throw numbers in, and we can get out a reasonable prediction within a few hours of when an eclipse is going to happen and where it's going to fall over. That's reliable. It's predictable. It doesn't matter whether there's consensus or not. That's kind of the funny thing about eclipse. The entire world could disagree with your ability to predict an eclipse. If you predict it properly, they're stupid. You're the smart one. And yet, what we see so often with climate change is, well, my scientific consensus says. Your scientific consensus can't predict shit. Okay, your scientific consensus 40, 50 years ago said that a global cooling was going to cause another ice age. You know, your scientific consensus said 30 years ago, 20 years ago, that we were going to melt the polar ice caps and have a new water world. We're going to have like the equivalent of water world. And since both of those predictions have not come true, now it's just climate change. And I'm sorry, using science to prove that the climate changes is a lot like proving that water is wet. It's kind of it's just, yes, climate changes. It does that. It's a complicated thing, and it does that. But the only value that science has, beyond helping us understand how the world works and how the universe we live in and how it operates, is in making predictions. You know, if we and using those predictions to create things, to interact with the universe. We're not designed to understand the world around us. That's not how evolution works, interestingly enough. There's a really cool video on it by David Hoffman, I think is his name. He does a lot of TED Talks. If you want to Google it, it's on YouTube. It's the evolutionary case for reality. Really mind-bending stuff. It's like a 2-minute long video, but at the end of the 2 minutes, you're just going to be like questioning your entire existence. But the human beings, we're not built to perceive reality. Science is one of our attempts at perceiving reality, understanding reality. It's not necessary for fitness, in other words, survival, but it's just something we do. And the reason why we do that is because we want to understand the world around us. There's a drive for knowledge. There's a drive to use that knowledge to make the world better. But it's only as good as our ability to actually use it. If you predict time and time again that the world's going to end, and it doesn't end, well, then we have to question the validity of your scientific model. I don't care how many people agree with you. Never mind that the 97%, was it 97% scientists supposedly agree?
Yeah.
And that turns out to be like total bullshit.
It is. Actually, here's oh, you got it, D? I was going to say, because...
the reason that it's 97% agreement is because they literally drive out anyone with a dissenting opinion.
Right.
So I got 100 people. 60 of them don't agree with me. 40 of them do. I'm just going to count the 40 that agree with me, and maybe like sprinkle in a few heretics. Okay.
Well, and here's the other thing, is that even of the 97% they are counting, they A, lied about what they said, and B, were very vague. So, again, the first question you have to ask when you hear 97% of scientists agree is agree on what precisely? Okay, this is very important because what they agree on actually does not matter. Because what they agree on is that the climate changes and humans are at least partly responsible for the changes. Duh. Everything affects the weather. Yes. Nowhere close to 97% agree that humans are the primary cause of climate change, or that climate change is even a bad thing. The thing is that climate has not changed in any way that it hasn't before. We are going through an interglacial period right now because there have been ice ages and interglacial periods, and right now it's a little warmer than normal. But we had the medieval cooling, or was it the medieval warming period? There was a little ice age. There again, how did we get a little ice age? How did we get a medieval warming period? You know, in medieval times when we didn't have cars, because the climate changes on its own. So the thing is that we are in one of those periods today. Now, are humans affecting the weather? Yes, because everything does. So of course we affect it. to what degree? Nobody really knows. All we know is that since the weather's not changing in any way it hasn't before, we're thinking humans don't have a huge amount of impact on the weather. But again, we don't really know. That's the thing.
Someone sent me a TED Talk a while ago. I don't remember who the scientist was, but basically the main thing that he talked about is how units of measurement aren't always constant. Like, I guess there was a time period where, like, basically there was a blip where things were like larger than normal. So scientists, you know, even though they were doing the test and seeing that blip because they were all getting the same thing, they like rewrote the results so that it would reflect the old measurement as opposed to the new one, so that it wouldn't be wrong. And I mean,
we call like, that molesting the data.
Like, but there's like this whole thing though where like things that people assume are constants, it's usually found out that it's not always a constant. So when people are like so tyrannical about things that they say are constant, and like scientists can't even agree that like time is a constant because time slows down and speeds up, or you know, like the speed of light or even the speed of sound, like those are all things that are supposed to be constants, but some science has sort of shown that it's really not.
Light is constant, sound is not. Sound depends on your medium.
I mean, but that, I think that was what they were measuring though, that there was like a whole bunch of stuff that was wrong. I'll find you the link, I'll send you the TED Talk later, but
post,
I mean,
yeah, post it in the comment section. That'll be good for people to look at.
Right. But like my whole point though is like science is something that is constantly changing, and it's supposed to change, and we're supposed to argue and disagree over it. And I feel like every time you say, no, this is it, this is settled science, you're just shooting yourself in the foot.
It's almost like it's almost like Mother Nature likes to troll us. Like the science is settled, the debate is over. Oh wait, here's another study that came out that proves you wrong. I was arguing this with somebody. Somebody was trying to prove that they were smarter than me by dogmatically adhering to certain scientific narratives, and she's like, I don't question the science. I'm like, well, then you're a lousy fucking scientist. I mean, that's really bad if you don't question anything. Like, imagine what would happen if people never questioned abiogenesis. Like, I'm sorry. Imagine if people never questioned, is the Earth really, really flat? I mean...
Is it really? You know what? Somebody said it was, so damn it, we're just going with that.
Yeah, the scientific community agrees. The Earth is flat. We're not going to question it. The science is settled.
Look, they put Galileo in jail.
Well, they also made him walk backwards on steps, I think. There's something. They made him lie down as they walked over him backwards or something like that. And then he, you know, dusted himself off and he said, it goes around the sun all the same.
Now, here's the other thing, is that I remember, I wish I had bookmarked all this stuff. I feel so bad because I was going through and I started noticing a trend among a lot of studies that try to claim that climate change is real and we're all going to die. There's a phrase that keeps coming up constantly, and that is, if current trends continue, this will happen. If current trends continue. I must have read that like 30 times, and I said it later on with the guy I was debating with at the time, I said, the only constant that the weather has is that current trends will never continue, which means anything that says if current trends continue is wrong.
So you actually bring up a really good point, and this is something that I can speak to just because of my background. So when you talk about trends, okay, the thing about trends that you have to understand is what constitutes a trend, okay? If I have a graph and I just put up a bunch of data points, okay? Depending on your window or your frame of reference, your trend may be one thing or another. So for example, and I don't have anything to draw with, otherwise I would draw a picture. Actually, I do have something to draw with. Let me illustrate with some pretty graphs here, and I promise I won't draw a penis this time.
Yeah, you know.
So let's say I've got a graph. I'm gonna plot a bunch of data points, and I'm gonna just draw them
Is the graph representing penis sizes? I know it
No, it's not. Okay, so I don't know how well you guys can see this, but if you look at this graph, right?
Yeah, there we go.
Okay, so would you say this graph is trending up or down?
Trending. It's kind of slightly down, but it seems fairly constant. But
well, so it's going down, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Over the long term, it's going down. Now it's going up initially, right? And now if you were to zoom in even more, like let's say you were to zoom in like right here, right? Is it trending up or down?
it trends up.
Right. And if you were to look here, it's trending down. So the whole problem with that comment of, well, if trends continue, then this. The problem is we don't have a frame of reference. We don't know. Climate doesn't change over the course of a day, a week, a month, a year, 10 years, 20 years. It changes over the course of generations, centuries, hundreds of years, thousands of years, tens of thousands of years. So
millions.
If trends, we do not have enough data. There's no way. How long have we been recording climate data? 100 years? 200 years?
About a century. Yeah.
So
reliably.
We're talking about one blip in history, and we're trying to extrapolate patterns that typically spread out over hundreds or tens of thousands of years, anywhere from hundreds to tens of thousands of years, depending on what kind of climate change you want to predict. So there's not enough data. There's absolutely not enough data. Now you can take scientific principles and say, well, for example, let's talk about greenhouse gases, right? We know that carbon dioxide is a greenhouse gas. That's the reason why people always talk about carbon and what you have to do to cause, why we have to control carbon and tax carbon and do cap and trade and all that fun stuff, because carbon dioxide is a greenhouse gas, meaning what it does is it traps a certain amount of infrared energy, and that infrared energy sits there in the atmosphere, and it heats things up. So we could extrapolate, if we know that to be true, then we can extrapolate, okay, if we put more carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, then the Earth will get warmer. And then if it gets warmer, then we can kind of extrapolate from there what happens. Again, the problem is we don't have enough data to know if our extrapolations are correct or not. But we can guess that the principle's right. But here's the problem. So carbon dioxide is a greenhouse gas, right? And we need to control carbon. So what? There's three other greenhouse gases, and two of them are more prevalent than carbon. The second most prevalent is methane. Mm-hmm. So cow farts. Yeah. We're not doing anything about cow farts.
Oh yeah.
We want to stop. We want to stop people from driving, and we want to stop American businesses from manufacturing. We don't stop Chinese or India, interestingly enough. But we don't want to stop cows from farting somehow. But actually, what's even funny is that the most prevalent greenhouse gas is actually water vapor. So every time you breathe or fart, you're contributing to greenhouse gases. And it's silly when you think about what would contribute then to a greenhouse effect and what we're not doing, what we're not even advocating. We're not advocating to cut water usage or water vapor. We're not calling water vapor pollution. Methane can be pretty noxious, but it also has energy benefits. We're not trying to cut that out of the picture. We're just trying to cut out carbon dioxide. Well, carbon dioxide, that's actually good for plants.
Well, yeah, exactly. So, and the other thing is that the problem is it's also not agreed upon that warming would even be a bad thing. Because you have to remember that historically, warming has been a good thing. Most living things like warmth. They don't like cold. So that being the case, as a net, when the Earth warms, living things tend to benefit. So the thing, it's not just plants. Plants are the first thing, but everything benefits from more plants growing, and again, most things live in warmth. The other thing,
I would take it a step further. I would say nothing's bad or good until you have something to compare it to. Whether it's too warm or too cold is relative to the ability of organisms to adapt. Humans adapt all the time. We've lived through ice ages. We've lived through tropical ages. Like, we do just fine as a species. We thrive. even in the face of diversity. Now, is there potentially mass die-offs or mass extinctions that could happen as a result of the Earth getting too warm or too cold? Yeah,
Maybe.
but that happens anyway.
So,
like, how many species are estimated to go extinct just right now as we're talking? There's supposed to, some species of dung beetle just went extinct. Somebody call the SJWs. They need to get like a candlelight vigil for these poor bastards, because who's going to roll up the poop now that these dung beetles are extinct? It happened, and it had nothing to do with climate change, and it had nothing to do with man-made interference. They just, there's a species of bat out there that really likes those dung beetles, and it ate them to extinction. That happens.
I might add that
die.
Well, I might add that there are some species we thought were extinct that it turned out weren't. Also, the other thing is the CO2 picture grossly oversimplifies the picture, because what nobody wants to really deal with in that is that weather responds. Weather has feedbacks, and so it responds to changes in certain gases. If you change the levels of water vapor or of CO2, weather changes to compensate. So what that means is that because the whole point of weather, this is something Dr. Roy Spencer said in Climate Confusion. What he pointed out is, he said, at its absolute most basic, there are two competing influences. You have the greenhouse effect, which the purpose of the greenhouse effect is to keep the Earth habitably warm. The purpose of weather, at the end of the day, is to keep the Earth habitably cool. So that being the case, you have the greenhouse effect and weather compensate with each other to keep the temperature roughly stable. And the temperature, as far as all data we have, has varied between a pretty set range. So basically, it hasn't changed. With all the human influence, that range hasn't shifted. It's still basically the same. The weather adapts to us. So just as we adapt to the weather, it adapts to us. So the thing is that it oversimplifies this idea that, oh my God, more CO2, because it's based on this idea that nature rests on this delicate balance, and if you upset the balance, everything will just go haywire and crazy. Actually, nature is pretty resilient. It is designed to self-correct. So that being the case, the weather is designed to self-correct. It tends to limit shocks to the change in temperature. That's largely its purpose. So
I sort of want to just jump in here. Our record keeping 200 years ago or 100 years ago probably wasn't the most accurate.
Reliable. No. Dear God, no.
In another 100 years, the level of record keeping is probably going to be much more accurate, that they're going to look back and be like, wow, those people were really freaking stupid.
Or just ignorant.
Or ignorant. But I mean, science progresses. It gets better. Like the level, I mean, when they used to use leeches to get rid of bad blood. We
have the four humors thing.
Right.
They always get mad when you bring that up. It's like scientific consensus. They say, when they say scientific consensus, and you're like, well, the scientific consensus.
Oh.
Mike, did you breathe?
It froze. It's global cooling. Global cooling. He froze. He's in an ice age. Yep. There we go. It's one of those things. But one of the things that I think is also crucial to understanding why this meme, I guess you could call it, of global warming or climate change is so persistent is something Rush Limbaugh said back in the 90s. And I believe he was absolutely right, because people are proving it every day. One is that the
cured bad blood and the Earth was flat. What do you think about that?
You're back.
You're back. We lost you for like pretty much all of that. But I was, he's probably resetting it. But the thing that the thing is that Oh, you want okay, let Mike finish what you're saying?
Yeah, let's let Mike finish his thought.
Hello.
Okay. Are you there? You can't hear us, can you? Can you hear? Can you hear? You can't hear us, can you? Ah, I froze again. See.
Okay.
Wait. Well, all I was going to say is simply that, oh, geez, let me not lose it. Just basically that, the Limbo pointed out that the environmentalists, because environmentalists are a large portion of the problem here. I mean, again, even when you're talking about green energy, they tend to be the main people who get in the way of it. But but before I get to that, the thing is that he said they're made up of basically two groups of people. You have the ideological types who are kind of old Marxists who figured out that if we can't beat capitalism, because they thought it would just collapse of its own accord, but newsflash was capitalism works. So they actually couldn't collapse it on its own. So what they did was they thought this whole obsession with environmentalism would be a way to crash capitalism. Then the other faction were the people who genuinely see this as a religion, like Al Gore. Al Gore sees this as a religious issue. You know, the whole Gaia theory, the idea that basically they worship the earth. So that's why they have this idea that man is the natural enemy of nature. Therefore, they see man's activity as a net negative always. So it's always their goal to roll back, basically to roll back technology, to roll back what we do.
Roll it back for the plebes, though. Not
oh,
for
of course, not them. Yes, of course, just you. You know, they can have an estate that uses as much electricity in a day as we do in a year. But no, yeah, right. we have to scale back, ride a bike to work. Not us. You, of course, have to do it. You know, and that's the way that you know that none of these people take this stuff seriously. Really,
I would love to be like the guy that gets on like live camera at like an event, like a Hollywood event, and just like say to like Leonardo DiCaprio or Al Gore, like, okay, if it's really this bad as you say it is, why do you tool around in a jet? Why do you have these mansions that just suck up carbon and energy and spew out greenhouse gases? Like, don't you think that's a little bit hypocritical for you to do that? Why aren't you leading by example and engaging in energy austerity yourself?
Why do you?
And then just watching that.
Well, it's true.
Security, get up!
Again, why do they own beachfront property? Oh my God, the sea levels are rising. You know what? I'm gonna get this beachfront property right over here because you know I'd love to have a house by the beach. I thought you said it was going to be underwater.
Well, another fun fact that I was going to mention before I had internet issues. You know, speaking to the point of resiliency, about how resilient the Earth is and the environment is, your typical volcanic explosion puts out more greenhouse gas in one eruption than some industrialized nations put out in a year.
Right.
So it's like the Earth pollutes itself more than we pollute it. So and that's
oil leaks from the ocean floor.
and that's another thing that people don't understand. You know, you mentioned earlier, John, about how, you know, do people contribute? Do we contribute to the environment? That may very well be true, but one of the debates that even people who believe in anthropogenic climate change have is to what extent?
Right,
because
that's key.
And that's one of the things you actually learn as an engineer. Engineering is not about it's not just about learning science and math and how to design things. One of where it becomes more of an art form than a science is learning what things are negligible. What variables can I ignore? Right. When I'm designing something, do I worry about the coefficient of friction of a lug nut on a screw? Do I care? I mean, I might if it'll negatively impact my design, but in man, it's not mattering, and I'll just ignore it. It's the same thing. Do humans contribute to climate change? We might very well contribute to on a massive scale, but is that contribution significant relative to the changes caused by volcanic eruption, relative to the changes caused by oil wells leaking into the ocean. And my oil reserve or oil wells, I don't mean like the rigs that we build. I'm just talking about like a natural crack in the crust, Earth's crust,
Oil deposits,
and oil is just spewing out of it because it's there.
Yeah.
Do we contribute as much as the sun? Do we contribute as much as solar radiation? Do we contribute as much as meteoric impact? Like, those are things that we're not talking about because typically we see them as one-offs. We see these, they're not events that happen in our everyday life. They're not events that we're constantly thinking about. We don't live on a volcanic island. But if we actually looked at them, we would see, okay, that one volcanic eruption did more to harm the environment than my Subaru does commuting to and from work every morning.
Right. And you know, like I was saying before, part of this is sheer religion. It really is. It's a sheer religious belief. Again, this is the irony. I was just reading a tweet literally before we got on from was it Michael Ian Black, who was talking about how you know, all arguments from Republicans, if you scratch the surface, there's always some faith-based argument. So I kind of replied to him, says the guy who backs the party who believes men can be women. The earth is going to be destroyed in 20 or 50 or however many years, make it sound urgent, but isn't right away, you know, or that babies in the womb aren't babies. And yet we're the ones who are faith-based. Yeah. Okay. No, you're relying on sheer faith to argue that man is the enemy to Gaia. And oh god, now I'm thinking of Captain Planet, and I love making fun of that show. The thing is that
I used to love that show. My mom wouldn't let me watch it after they kind of bashed on us for having more than 2 kids. I'm the oldest of 5, so.
Oh yeah, that's a shame. Really, I was going to say it was such a funny show, but the thing is that this religious idea that man is the enemy of Gaia, so therefore, even because again, Roy Spencer asked a very good question in Climate Confusion. He said, let's just imagine for the sake of argument that we absolutely proved one day that climate change theory, that we're all going to die, that it's all wrong. And that actually climate is exactly what we say it is. Resilient, it's not going to change, we don't have to worry that much over it. What would these people do? Do you think they would say, oh, I guess we were wrong. Well, thank God we were wrong. I guess we don't have to worry about it. No, they would freak the fuck out because they would basically be going like, oh my God, no, it has to be true. That's why you get people saying, even if it were proven not to be true, we would still pursue the same policies we're pursuing today because it's about the policies, not about the weather. It's not about climate change. It's about the policies in response.
I just want to interrupt here for just a second.
Sure.
The EPA is maybe one of the most corrupt federal agencies we have.
Excuse me.
Well, like they like I think there was a news article that came out a few months ago, right after Trump took office, about how they like basically plagiarizing their results. You know, or making up their results of like the papers that they were putting out. And then they were also like their budget came out and they spent like $1 million on chairs or, you know, something. But every time someone like threatens the EPA or like their jobs are like, or like they fire them or something, there's this just gigantic mass freak out on the left. And then like all of these major publications come out and they say, oh, they hate science, it's proof. And then you're just like, oh my God, like, did you ignore the like 8 different times that the EPA like was basically doing
polluted the river and turned it orange? Like
and yes, they did. and the answer to that, by the way, is yes, they did ignore it.
It looked like Tang. It looked like Tang, I swear. Only it's Tang if Tang gave you cancer.
Yeah, so it'd be like
actually, Tang might give you cancer. So maybe that's a bad analogy.
And second, may very well be the case. But you know, and that's why. And then what's worse is, these people who are swearing up and down that we're all going to die, they wonder why nobody takes them seriously. And it's amazing to me how people can say, basically, we're throwing out all dissenting ideas. We don't care if you're a skeptic. We're basically saying that you're a Holocaust denier. Some people going so far as to say we should have a climate Nuremberg, which I laugh at, because I was like, if we're all going to die, I guess you won't be around for it anyway. But the point is
it inappropriate if I did like a Zeke Heil right now? I probably shouldn't do that, huh?
You probably shouldn't, but I'd find it funny. But that's just
especially not with a black and a Jewish co-host.
Speaking of resilience, I'm hella resilient. You remember my other friend John, who he's the one who was always talking about how people get psychologically hurt if you say the wrong thing to them. So I said I must be superhuman. This is what it comes down to. It's not that I'm just better than you, because I think that, so because I can hear things like that and basically go, whatever. It's like I don't really care. But like, but it's amazing to me. It's so funny to listen to people who just, oh my God, I can't believe you don't take this guy I was debating with. Again, I spent like 2 or 3 days on and off debating with him. And that's what he was saying, is how arrogant of you, the hubris of you to not agree. When the scientists say A, you're supposed to just, yes, master, you are the expert.
It's funny. No. It's funny you bring that up, because I've observed that. Like people, I've observed more or less that behavior. Like, oh my gosh, how stupid are you that you don't agree with the scientists? And then I'll be like, bro, I'm a fucking scientist. Like, membership has its privileges. I'm allowed to disagree. The real question is, why don't you agree with me? I'm a scientist. Like, where the fuck's your degree, bro? Come on.
Right? You might as well play up the what is it? The appeal to authority.
I'll be the first to admit that I didn't get a degree in engineering because I was a super engineering fan, or really wanted to be an engineer. I mean, I like being an engineer. I like designing things. I like tinkering with things, fixing things, and so on and so forth. But one of my primary motivations, I'm not going to lie, one of my primary motivations for getting a degree in mechanical engineering was so that when I had these debates, because I've always liked to talk politics, I've always loved to debate politics.
Right.
Is when people say, "Oh, you don't know what you're talking about. You're just a dumb white guy." I'm going to be like, "Fuck you. I have a degree, and I'm smarter than you. Suck my academic cock." Okay.
And in my case, I can just say I'm smarter. I was going to say, I guess that's about it. Do I have a degree?
You know what? Sometimes you need that piece of paper, because you can say it all you want, and they'll just convince themselves that they're still smarter than you. But you flash them a piece of paper, they'll still think they're smarter than you, but they really don't have much to back it up with. They just like
I'm a hacker. I can make whatever I want. But like,
I'll go to jail for that, John.
They have to catch me first. But okay.
And he's having fun with cats at home.
That sounded like a small dog. I was going to say.
No, I threw something at him and I missed.
You missed? Or you hit him?
No, she said she missed. I was going to say.
Oh, that's disappointing.
What?
See, we hate the environment. We hate animals.
Exactly. Just
you should totally rat us out to PETA so we can deal with them in our timelines on Twitter, because we would love to hear them freak out over the throwing shit at cats.
Ban me from Twitter. I'm moving to Gab. But like so,
I don't think you'll fit in there, bro.
But and like I said, it's been, and here the other thing you touched on was, how many decades of wrong predictions do you have to have before we're allowed to say, maybe we're a little bit doubtful about your track record? That's basically what the left is saying, is we should be allowed to make whatever predictions we want, be wrong about all of them, and you're still supposed to bow down and kiss our boots whenever we say anything, because we're scientists. And it's like, dude, scientists or not, you were still
awfully like the church, like 1,500 years ago.
Right? Whatever we say.
We're wrong about everything. And nothing we've said that we predicted has come true. But if you disagree with us, you still have to give us all your money. And if you disagree with us, we'll kill you. We'll burn you at the stake.
Well, it's also like, was it was it Steven Crowder, I think it was, who was saying recently the whole, you know, that basically leftists worship government to the degree that they think that we'll be protected from hurricanes if you just pray to it and give it. No, it was, I think it was Matt Walsh said it. Now I'm thinking about it. But
Trump has a secret weather machine in the Oval Office.
oh, did he get it from the same place that Bush did? I was going to say, which is a little weird because you'd think if Bush had a weather machine, he'd have hit someplace other than Texas, but you know, certainly not Florida. You know, certainly not Florida. That was one of the key states.
I messed up, big y'all. I meant to hit North Korea.
Well, maybe he got the weather machine from North Korea. Yeah, see, I think that's what happened there. It came from North Korea. They're in cahoots with each other. But, you know, and God forbid, I swear there are probably people out there who believe this. And what's worse is the fact that as bad as it was when they did it with Bush, it's worse with Trump, because I was like, how can you look at a guy this incompetent and honestly believe any kind of conspiracy theory concerning him? But, you know,
it's kind of the same logic though, like how, with climate change. It's like, okay, we can't predict the weather like accurately within like 2 weeks notice, and you want me to believe that your models can mathematically predict how bad the weather is going to get 10 years from now or 20 years from
or
now.
100 years from now.
I think Walt's models are the best, the absolute best.
I don't know. In Colorado, they're like the highest meteorologists, are like the highest paid and least accurate in the entire country. Is my understanding. It's like if you don't like weather in Colorado, you just wait 5 fucking minutes, and then it's like, oh hey.
Well, and you have to remember that one of the things, again, and like I said, I draw a lot from Roy Spencer because, like I said, this was kind of the seminal book that got me to really thinking about how does weather actually work. Is he said,
Richard Spencer, we're good.
What? No, Roy, please. But did I say Richard? I hope I didn't. I was going to say, Roy Spencer pointed out, he said, honestly, it does require a certain amount of reverence for how weather works. Weather is unbelievably complex. And he said the reality is that, and I find this is true in many areas, that people who lack a certain degree of reverence for the thing that they're dealing with tend to think that, oh, we can encapsulate it. We can totally predict everything it's going to do. Even things that we create. If a sufficiently complex machine, I remember reading somewhere they were saying that if it's sufficiently complex and contains enough separate subsystems, eventually you get to the point where you really can't predict what those subsystems are going to do when you put them together. If that's true for things we make, how is it any less true for things we didn't make? Things that are so complex that we can't begin to even understand components of that system. We still don't fully understand how clouds affect the weather. We still don't fully understand how the sun affects the weather. We understand some of it, but we don't understand everything. And some of the crucial components to being able to predict weather rely on us understanding things that we don't even begin to comprehend. That should give you some degree of awe and say, you know what, I'm going to err on the side of the fact that maybe we don't know. Let's be sure. Let's understand properly. Do we actually know enough to predict this thing? No, leftists just come out and say, you have the hubris for not listening to random scientists over here. But they're totally okay to say that, no, we can predict everything. No, weather is totally within our grasp. We understand everything, even though honest scientists will tell you, we don't understand shit. Because, you know.
I know a lot of people are like, I believe in science. It's like, guys, it's not a religion. It's not a cult.
Yeah, exactly. It's not something you
don't believe in science. We observe, we hypothesize, we observe, we conclude. Like, right. That's science. That's the scientific method. You're like, you don't understand the scientific method. There's really not much to it. It's not hard to understand. It's not this arcane, esoteric thing. It's, it's, you have a hypothesis, you collect some data, you decide whether your hypothesis was a good one or absolute bullshit. If it's a good one, you test that hypothesis over and over and over again under different circumstances. See if you can isolate different things. If it turns out to be total bullshit, you go back to the drawing board and you say, what else could it be? That's the questioning part of it. That's the part where we say, I'm not entirely convinced. The data supports it here, but it doesn't support it here. I can make a reasonable prediction in this span of or circumstances, but I can't do it in this. A really good example. So one of the things you learn when you're starting out in college, if you're learning any kind of STEM, is physics, and you learn about Newtonian mechanics. Okay, Newtonian mechanics is great. I love Newtonian mechanics. I love Newton's three laws. They're really cool. They're actually kind of mind bending, but they're also very simple. And the thing about Newtonian mechanics, if you learn Newton's law of gravitation, one of the things that's kind of cool about Newton's law of gravitation is that it works in all cases in our solar system except one. And in that one system, in that one circumstance, your predictions are a little off. They're just, you can never get it right, and not with any degree of accuracy that you can get with the other planets and the non-planet Pluto. You can get, now if you want to get accurate results within the same degree of accuracy for all the planets, you have to step it up a notch. You actually have to use Einstein's theory of relativity. And why is that? Well, it's because Einstein's models are better, they're more complex than Newton's models. Now, we still learn Newton's models because for our frame of reference, Newton's models are good enough. They do the job. For everything we want to do on Earth, Newton and Leibniz, they get the job done. If you want to do something on a much grander scale, if you want to, span the solar system or the universe, you have to get a little more complicated. You have to use Einstein. And that's the questioning thing. If we just stuck with Newton, we said, well, Newton is good enough. He does the job. We wouldn't have nuclear energy. We wouldn't have split the atom. We wouldn't have done so many things that we've done as part of the atomic age that Einstein and others kind of helped develop. So that's the questioning aspect of it. That's the scientific method. You're not supposed to just sit on your ass and rest on your laurels and say, okay, I like this, I don't need to know more. You need to question it. You need to assume it's wrong. And then, it's funny, the left loves to bash religious faith. They love, because I'm also very religious. I'm a scientist, but I'm also very religious. And people see that as like there's some kind of dichotomy, like you can't be one or the other. Like, nope, I have no problem reconciling my faith with science. I absolutely do not. I've never had cognitive dissonance regarding my scientific knowledge and my religious beliefs. I've never tried to make my religion explain things it was never intended to explain, just like I've never tried to make science explain things it was never intended to explain. And I do just fine. I'm a damn good scientist, and I'm pretty good. I'm okay member of my faith. But it's for all their bad mouthing of religion, they treat science like a religion. I believe in science. Okay, that's not how science works. You don't believe in it. You don't have faith in science. Okay, you question it. You scrutinize it. You analyze it. You beat the living shit out of it. You torture test it, your theories, and then that's how you get the best theories. That's how you get progress. That's how you advance science. If you don't do that, we're gonna go back to the Dark Ages, where everyone's just a religious nut job, and the end of the world will die.
And one thing I want to forward at the end of it all, well, not the end of it all, it's a short thing, but is a concept by a guy by the name of Douglas Axe, and he was really you're supposed to do that before we go in here, but I'm
ready for my close-up, Mr. DeVille.
The concept he brought up is a thing called common science, and I think this is a very important thing because I think it's helpful for people. When you're dealing with these topics and you're dealing with people who want to make that argument appeal to authority that says, well, you have to agree with the scientists. But to an extent, as you said, science is not a big esoteric thing. We're all scientists to some degree. We all test things and do things by trial and error in our lives. Now, yes, there are some subjects that are somewhat arcane, but the fact remains that we are capable as human beings of determining certain things, and especially when the thing in question affects your life. if the thing you're saying is too esoteric for you to understand, affects my life, you damn well better believe that I do get a say in it. And I don't need a degree to be able to say whether the weather is causing enough problem or whether we're causing enough problem to need to tell the government you need to be able to set my thermostat or tell me whether I can drive a particular car. I don't need a degree to be able to get enough information to be able to myself make the judgment and vote as such, that I have the ability to say that, no, this is wrong. The evidence does not fit what you're saying. I can say that, whether I have a degree or not, because
you touch on a point, that a really good point that's brought up in the chat here from John Wiseman, regarding global temps. You see, and he says, they're covered as global warming causes temps to go up and down, don't you know? Or in other words, how is their theory falsified? If nothing can or would disprove it, then is the theory even worth mentioning in the first place? In other words, if your hypothesis, if no matter what the circumstances are, your hypothesis is always right, then you've got a shitty hypothesis. Right. If everything we do makes temperatures go up or temperatures go down, or if temperatures going up or down are going to have the same result, more hurricanes, right, more tornadoes, more whatever. The hypothesis, there's no, it's bad scientific theory. You can't falsify it. You can't torture test it. You can't prove it wrong. And that's like the whole basis of science is it's a null hypothesis. You've got to prove the null hypothesis. Right. Dee, did you have any final words? We're going to wrap up here.
I mean, all of this is a little bit out of my wheelhouse. I'll be honest.
Okay, we're bullshitting anyway. Shut up. We're not real scientists. We don't understand anything. So I mean, you can say whatever you want.
My
sure, woman, you'll get away with it.
I guess something that we're all sort of ignoring the fact that all of the people who are screaming science are the people who have been majoring in gender studies for the last 18 years and who say that there are 832 genders or 651 or something, and that men can be women and women can be boys, and that men have penises.
Or women have penises, rather.
Women have penises.
Men can have periods too, guys.
There we go. That's what we're going for.
Don't understand how, but they can.
Yep,
but
it works somehow.
We're supposed to take all of that on. We're supposed to take their word as the end all be all. And part of me is like, I got more education in my 6th grade science class and in my 4th grade science class than what these people are getting now in college. And I just stop.
It's a waste of money. I kind of graduated disillusioned with formal education. Like, why did I spend my money on this? I could have taught myself. I could have bought the books, read the books, do the homework, and I probably would have gotten the same value as far as like what I actually learned. I just, you're buying with your tens of thousands of dollars when you go to college is a piece of paper, in my opinion. Now, can you make it? Can you make it go for work for you? Yeah, I believe I did. I got an education, but not because the institution was designed to educate me, but it was because I was stubborn and I wanted to learn things. So, to your point, it's stupid. Yeah. It's stupider still when people are going to school and they're getting degrees in things that have nothing to do with science, and then they're acting as if like they're the end all be all experts on all things science. It's like, guys, you literally think a man can have a uterus?
It's like, I'm sorry, your claim to science is now defunct.
I took anatomy in college. It was actually a really cool course because my emphasis was actually.
I also took it in middle school.
Well, this was a little different because we actually had cadavers. And we had a male cadaver and we had a female cadaver. And I can tell you, the male cadaver did not have a uterus. I got an A in that class. I busted my ass and got an A in the class. The final involved us poking around the dead bodies and pointing to things and saying this is this. Again, and this is that. There was no uterus in the male cadaver. I just trust me on this guy.
He's a scientist.
There was no penis on the female cadaver either. It was. So anyway.
Yep. So
that's. I think we've covered all our bases today. We're going to wrap it up a little bit early. just a teensy bit.
Aw,
Make sure to
you've been so
follow us
precise in all the other
on
ones.
Twitter. Follow Ornery YG, Ornery Young Guns on Twitter, and if you look in my bio, you will see D and John. D is I hate everyone too. There's an underscore in there somewhere, and John is Kamui Hideyoku, and that's not
Yes, there we
spelled
go.
like
You
it
got it
sounds.
this time.
I'm very good at my pronunciation. I just know that's not how it's
Sounds
spelled.
exactly like it sounds if you know how to speak some other languages. That's all.
Next week we are talking immigration.
Next week we're talking
that's right, I
immigration.
remember.
D's going to drive that one. And have we heard any word on whether we're going to have a guest with us?
We may have a guest. We may. I have feelers out for 2 people. I'm trying to get them both interested.
Do we want to get people's hopes up so we can dash them on the rocks like a baby seal? Or
I'd rather remain shrouded in mystery. Let's remain shrouded in mystery. They might.
Let's not jinx it. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, that's what it is right there.
Okay. All right. I know who you've been talking to. I didn't want to say anything, so I'll keep my mouth shut.
If they would be an expert on the subject, I really, really want them. Just we need to figure out how to keep it anonymous.
Oh
we
wait,
can do that.
so
we can make that happen.
They just turn their video off, right? Anyway.
Yeah, we can just turn off his camera. That won't be a problem. Leave his microphone on. That won't be a problem.
There we go.
Or same way, well, the other person that we're thinking of doesn't need that, right?
The other person is smart too, and they would also be pretty, not quite as much of an expert, but an expert.
And I know they're both more hawkish on this issue than I am. So we're gonna have a debate. It's gonna be awesome.
So it'll be great.
Okay, I'm excited. That's another fun topic. Speaking of immigration, if you guys have not been following us, if you go to my timeline, there is a thread that I wrote on DACA. It actually went viral. I did not expect it to, but it was a really cool feeling. So if you go, just type in, do a word search in Twitter. You can look for Ornery Young Guns or Ornery YG, and just look for some thoughts on DACA and the DACA. That's it's a good thread. It's about my personal experience with immigration as I try to get my wife into this country. So it might educate you on some of the challenges that immigrants face, that Americans face as we try to fix the boondoggle that is immigration law. So we will end on that note. You guys have any final comments?
I'm good. I had mine.
Don't worship things unless. Well, I don't worship things that should be questioned or make questioning part of your worship.
I question my faith all the time. That's how I get to where I am religiously, but that's just me. And it drives some people in my faith batshit. Like, you're not supposed to question that, man. I'm like, why not?
I am pro questions. If you can't question it, don't do it.
The truth will always stand up to rigorous questioning. So that was your moment of zen. You guys have a good night, and we'll see you next week.